I'm willing to bet this is the first kind of real sad chapter of the series. I mean, we've gotten like backstory and stuff, but like the first one that's really happened in real time. And it's done in a way that it's more impactful for Uraha's character than for what's going on for the reader. Because I think for the reader, like we barely know this character, but I feel like there's nothing to dislike about her. She's likable. She's a pretty interesting character. Nothing too crazy, like I said, but I think it still does the job well for the only 10 chapters. It doesn't have to be some mega impact. It just has to obviously have some effect and then set the kind of tone and the stage for stuff to go on. Obviously, we know that the whole yokai don't technically die. They're pretty much sidelined for like 100+ years, and somebody has to bring them back with enough money to form a body, which I like, because it's interesting in the concept, because they aren't quote unquote dead, but you essentially would be living in this really weird state where like you might not even see the people you're like your family or your friends that you knew at one point, because maybe you reincarnate while they're not up, or say they're up and then you die, you're out for 100 years. Who knows what happens in that 100 years with them and how it's going to go. Maybe they die 50 years in, and then you guys are just off cycle the whole time, and unless you go and resurrect them, they're going to be forever like set to never see him again. They're going to be doing different years. Like, it's a weird idea, but I like it. It adds like a different kind of punishment for that kind of situation. Instead of a character dying, it's like they are effectively dead from a story standpoint, because they have to either be brought back or wait a long time. So the whole bit that we got from this chapter, I mean, we're not really seeing anything at all for Maruo. He's pretty much just gone, like not like gone, but like mentally just gone, like the whole chapter. We're not really seeing anything with him, understandably so, because like he got beat to hell. So like this isn't going to be a chapter for him. This is actually more of a focused chapter on Nura's flashback. So like when she first formed, and this is what I was talking about, because this is a good example of the whole system of like how the yokai work. She's reformed, but by that time her father had already been kind of like set into whatever events, because he's been active for a while, and because of that she's in, we don't know the context. I would assume that he does care about her, and he probably kept her away because it would be dangerous for her. That's an assumption, but I feel like that'll be the most likely thing, because it does make sense. It'll be really weird if it goes with the whole plot line that he actually hated his daughter and didn't want to like make sure she's taken care of, because it's like, otherwise why wouldn't he just go and like have her killed or something? But she's like going over this whole thing. She waited for her father, and it's always like she always thinks she's gonna meet him, but she never does. And then it gets to the point where he ends up pretty much just never being there, and she just seems to think her dad never cared about her. But she got like reconfirmation that her dad does care about her, and that's like, I feel like that makes sense, because like that kind of like very severe reaction, it could be that her dad didn't care about her, and it's like this way that she's trying to console, a very upset little girl. Or it's like she knows that her father wants to see her, but due to reasons he can't, and maybe it's like for her, she knows maybe it's hard for her to see like her boss that she respects a lot go through pain, because he can't like take care of his kid or see her. Well, he can't see her, but he's got to take care of her, kind of thing instead. Who knows? That's something we got to see in the future. Ayashimon, I'm hoping survives. I like it so far, as I've mentioned. It's good. I enjoy the characters. I like the setup. I like the art style, and I'm intrigued about the story. I think so far, I mentioned for Doron, I can't pronounce. It's always hard to pronounce. Doron. The thing with that series, I think the biggest pull right now is the character Kusanagi, because he's very intriguing. I think Ura is that for Ayashimon, because her backstory and her role in the story, at least right now, I think is the most interesting part of everything, because it's such an interesting way to that it very easily and logically can tie into like the whole Yakuza thing. but it adds a lot of mystery setup of obviously like what's the deal with her dad, what's the deal with what's going on in the background, how did it happen, who did it. Like there's a lot of that kind of obviously basic murder plotline stuff that I think is it again, it's one of those very basic plot kind of points, but it's one that's very easy to understand and it's very easy to digest. And then without having to really do a whole lot, you're able to kind of like form the obvious questions of, thinking about a murder that make it interesting. And I like that like the series itself didn't start out complicated or kind of too crazy. It got very straightforward with a lot of its components, and I think that's doing a lot of good things for people. Because the way that it's going, it's trying to have this very old shonen style, but I personally think the old shonen style, at least for Shonen Jump, doesn't seem to really work with the current generation, because a lot of newer gen readers are way less patient. And any of the older readers out there can kind of understand what I mean. And I don't think it's all the younger readers, but there's a lot of younger readers that they don't want to wait a long time for like the plot to get set up. They don't want to wait for like I think, for example, for Black Clover, I'd say really the plot kind of really the plot really is structured and built, I think, around like the early 20s, like when they're getting ready, when they're doing all this stuff in the Capitol and the Eye of the Midnight Sun invades. Whereas like say something like Seven Deadly Sins or Fairy Tail over in Weekly Shonen Magazine, I would say like a lot of their more big story stuff doesn't start till like 40-50 chapters in, because a lot of the old shonens, and you can look at a lot of the older Shonen Jump series too, they take a good while to really set out their plans. Probably like a good, again, 40 to 50 chapters before they get to the larger scale stuff. Whereas these other series, they move at a much faster pace. And I think the way that Ayashimon is doing it is it's trying that older style, but it's making it so it's like everything is way more kind of, whittled down and grounded to be easier to understand. So you're able to have that older style at a pace and kind of a content style that it's very easy to take in. And I mentioned this with like Build King, another series that I liked but got axed. I think that the series tried to do too much stuff too fast over a too long period of time, essentially, when it comes to like some of the stuff. Some of like the larger scale stuff, I think it should have kind of like happened earlier and then like focus way more on like building stuff up and maybe spreading it out over time. But I think Ayashimon so far is doing much better at its early game and its early setup. And I think people have been really liking it so far. The main character's pretty cool. The art's nice. The fights are pretty good so far. I want to know where like the story's going to go from here, because I didn't think that the one girl, I can't remember how to pronounce her name. It's like Hime Gami or Hime Hagi or something. I can't remember. The friend of Ruha that's saving her. Obviously, like I wish she was around more so I could remember her better, because like I like her design. I like her her yokai form. But I'm fine with where it's at now, because I think this sets the early stage really well. And with her gone, it makes me wonder now, like how things are going to go for the main cast, because I figured she was going to be a member of the main cast, and she was going to be, the kind of like, not caretaker, but kind of like I guess if Mara was like the right hand, she'd be like the left hand of Ura. So that would just make sense to me. You have like the fighter, and then you have the person who is way more kind of capable, way more knowledgeable, has way more of the business side to them and connections and stuff. Whereas like Maru again is the battle guy. I think that would have been a good balance, and I feel like most people would agree, but obviously it wasn't the plan for what was going on with like what the mangaka's got set up in mind. So again, interesting stuff coming up. Like this chapter, I didn't have as much specific things to say, because again, it's very set around like that flashback and the whole stuff around her dad. But I think the stuff around these last couple chapters that's way more interesting to me is how it's kind of setting the stage. The main character losing, they have to make a retreat. We get a flashback and information on, the female lead, as well as like her cool yokai form. We already lost an ally. I wonder. That's the last thing I'll mention in this review. The one thing I really wonder about, anytime they return to money, like I know that it's like 100 years before they come back, but I wonder if like how much would they need to be able to gather in order to bring someone back faster? Like theoretically, like say it's like they have some uphill arcs, like they have a good couple arcs, and they gather enough money to bring her back. Would they be able just to resurrect her? I guess not resurrect, but reform her. And then like I wonder what the reforming process is, because I assume this is an assumption. I assume that any of them are reformed and kind of re-given a body are essentially are done so at like similar to how we see Ura as a young child, kind of like, you know, in a very young state. Because I feel like it'd be very strange if you were born always in like this one exact state. But I guess it would really depend on like the yokai maybe. But if they age, then it would make sense for them to, you know, I think in their best interest to be reborn in the world at a young age so you can, you know, live longer. So anyway, other than that though, again, solid chapter, good stuff. I'm hoping, you know, I've got some good hopes for this series. I like the mangaka and I like this series so far, like the characters and whatnot. I will say I really want to get to, I'm hoping after this we can get to like a mini arc and we can actually get to like a bad guy mini boss that's both competent, but also Maro can beat. But other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, friend the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. When that, appreciate you subscribe. Thanks for all for listening. Bye.